Captain Minju Kim stood on the bridge of the starship Hangang, watching Earth grow smaller through the main window. The blue and green planet that had been humanity's home for thousands of years was now just a bright dot among the stars. She felt a mix of excitement and sadness as their ship moved away from everything they had ever known. "All systems are working perfectly, Captain," said Commander Tae-hyun Park from his station. He was checking the ship's engines and making sure everything was ready for their long journey. The Hangang was the biggest and most advanced ship humans had ever built. It took them 20 years to design and construct it. Chief Engineer Eunji Lee walked onto the bridge with a big smile on her face. "The fold space drives are ready to go," she announced. "We can start our first jump whenever you give the order." The fold space technology was something humans had only recently learned how to use. It would let them travel much faster than ever before, crossing huge distances in just a few days instead of years. Minju nodded and looked around at her crew. There were 300 people on the Hangang, and they would all be away from Earth for 50 years. It was the longest space mission humans had ever attempted. Many of the crew members were young, knowing they would be middle-aged or older when they returned home. "Before we make our first jump, I want everyone to remember why we're doing this," Minju said to her crew. "The alien races in this galaxy think we're just children playing with toys. They believe humans only learned to fly between stars 200 years ago. They think we're too young and stupid to matter." The crew listened carefully. They all knew about the Terran Assessment Council, a group of powerful alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. These aliens had visited Earth 50 years ago and decided that humans were not important. They gave Earth permission to explore space, but only because they thought humans were harmless and would never find anything useful. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi, the ship's scientist who studied old civilizations, stepped forward. "Captain, I need to show you something before we leave," he said. His voice sounded worried, and his hands were shaking slightly. "I found something in Earth's rocks that doesn't make sense." Minju looked at him with curiosity. "What kind of something?" "Metal pieces that are millions of years old. But they're made with technology we only invented 50 years ago," Hyunwoo explained. "I found them deep underground, in rock layers that formed long before humans were supposed to exist. There are also strange symbols carved in ancient caves that look like our modern writing systems." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone was staring at Hyunwoo, trying to understand what he was saying. "Are you sure about this?" Tae-hyun asked. "Maybe the dating is wrong?" "I checked everything 3 times, Hyunwoo replied. "I even had other scientists look at my work. The evidence is real. There's something about human history that we don't understand." Minju felt a chill run down her back. "Do you think other humans lived on Earth before us?" "I don't know," Hyunwoo said, "but I think our mission might help us find answers. If there are more clues out there in space, we need to look for them." Navigator Yuna Jang spoke up from her position. "Captain, the Alien Council gave us maps of where we're allowed to explore. Most of the areas are empty space with dead planets. They said nothing interesting exists in those regions." "Maybe that's exactly why we should look there," said Cultural Specialist Dong-yuk Nam. "If the aliens think those places are boring, they might not have explored them carefully." Medical Officer Haeun Song checked her equipment one more time. "Whatever we find out there, we'll be ready for it," she said. "I've prepared the medical bay for any kind of emergency." Communications Officer Jin Woo Lim turned toward the captain. "Should I send a final message to Earth before we jump?" Minju thought for a moment. "Yes. Tell them we're beginning our mission with hope and determination. Tell them we'll make humanity proud." As Jinwoo sent the message, Minju walked around the bridge, looking at each of her crew members. These people had volunteered to spend 50 years of their lives exploring unknown parts of space. They left behind families, friends, and comfortable lives on Earth because they believed in human potential. "Everyone take your positions," Minju announced. "We're about to make history." The crew moved quickly to their stations. Yoonji started the fold space engines, and the ship began to vibrate gently. Outside the windows, the stars started to change color and stretch into long lines. "Fold space drive activated," Yoonji reported. "We'll reach our first destination in 6 days." As the Hangang jumped through space, moving faster than light itself, Minju thought about Hyunwoo's discovery. What if humans had been in space before? What if they had traveled to other worlds millions of years ago? The idea seemed impossible, but the evidence was there in Earth's ancient rocks. She looked at the star maps on her screen, showing the path they would take through unexplored space. The Alien Council had given them permission to visit 17 different star systems, all far away from important alien worlds. The council members probably thought humans would find nothing but empty planets and floating rocks. But Minju had a feeling they were wrong. Something was waiting for them out there in the dark spaces between stars. Something that might change everything humans thought they knew about themselves. The ship moved through fold space, carrying its crew toward mysteries they couldn't imagine. Behind them, Earth continued spinning around its sun, unaware that its children were about to discover secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. In her private cabin that night, Minju looked at photos of Earth on her wall. She wondered if she would ever see her home planet again, and if she did, would she still be the same person? Would any of them be the same after 50 years of exploring the unknown? She fell asleep thinking about ancient metal pieces buried in Earth's soil and symbols carved in prehistoric caves. Somewhere in her dreams, she saw vast cities among the stars and ships that looked like the Hangang flying through galaxies she had never seen. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back now. The Hangang arrived at its first destination after 6 days of travel through fold space. Captain Minju Kim stood on the bridge, looking at a red star with 3 dead planets orbiting around it. The star was old and dying, casting a dim light that barely reached the outer planets. "Scanning the first planet now," reported navigator Yuna Jang. Her instrument showed readings that made her frown. "Captain, there's something strange here. The planet has structures on its surface, but they're very old." "How old?" asked Minju. "The computer estimates they've been there for at least 2 million years," Yuna replied. "But that's impossible. The Alien Council said this system was always empty." Commander Taehyun Park moved closer to look at the scanner displays. "Maybe the aliens made a mistake. Or maybe they never looked carefully at these planets." "Let's go down and see for ourselves," Minju decided. "Prepare a landing team." 2 hours later, a small shuttle carrying 8 crew members landed on the planet's surface. The air was thin and cold, so they wore special suits to breathe. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi led the team toward the structures that their ship had detected from space. What they found made everyone stop and stare in shock. Rising from the rocky ground were the remains of a huge city. The buildings were broken and worn down by millions of years of wind and weather, but their basic shape was still clear. Most surprising of all, the architecture looked familiar. "These buildings look like human designs," said cultural specialist Dong Hyuk Nam, taking pictures with his camera. "See how the doorways are shaped? They're the right size for humans to walk through. And look at these stairs. They're made for people with legs the same length as ours." Hyunwoo knelt down and examined the building materials. "This metal is similar to what we use on Earth, but it's much more advanced. It should have turned to dust after so many years, but something is keeping it strong." Medical Officer Haeun Song collected samples of everything she could find. "I need to study these materials in the ship's laboratory," she said. "There might be biological traces that can tell us who built this city." The team spent 3 days exploring the ruins. They found more evidence that confused them. The buildings were designed for people who looked like humans. The rooms were the right size, the furniture was the right height, and even the writing on the walls used symbols that seemed somehow familiar. Communications Officer Jinwoo Lim made an interesting discovery in what appeared to be an old control room. "Captain, I'm detecting strange energy patterns here," he reported through his radio. "The frequencies match something I've seen before, but I can't remember where." When they returned to the Hangang, the crew was full of questions but had no answers. Over the next few weeks, they visited 4 more planets in different star systems. Each time, they found similar ruins. Ancient cities built for human-like beings, using technology that was far more advanced than anything Earth had ever created. "This is the 6th planet with ruins," said Yuna as they approached another dead world. "How is this possible? Who built all these cities?" Haeun had been working in her laboratory every day, studying the samples they collected. "I've found something important," she announced during a crew meeting. "The biological traces in these ruins contain genetic material that's very similar to human DNA. Not identical, but close enough to suggest a connection. What kind of connection? Asked Minju. I'm not sure yet, Hyun admitted. But whoever built these cities was related to humans in some way. The genetic markers are too similar to be a coincidence. As months turned into years, the pattern continued. Every system they visited had at least one planet with ancient ruins. The crew started keeping detailed records of everything they found. Dong-hyuk created a database of symbols and architectural styles. Jinwoo mapped the energy frequencies he detected. Hyunwoo studied the technology and building methods. During their third year of exploration, they made their most important discovery yet. On a planet orbiting a yellow star very similar to Earth's sun, they found ruins that were much better preserved than the others. The buildings were still mostly intact, and some of the technology was still working. "Look at this," said Chief Engineer Yoonji Lee, standing in front of a wall covered with symbols. "I think this might be some kind of star map." The symbols showed the positions of stars and planets, with lines connecting different systems. In the center of the map was a symbol that looked like a small blue world. "That symbol in the middle," said Jinwoo, studying it carefully. "I've seen it before. It looks like the symbol humans use to represent Earth." The crew stared at the map in silence. If Jinwoo was right, this ancient star chart showed Earth at the center of a vast network of connected worlds. But how could that be possible? Humans had only been traveling to other planets for 200 years. "There's more," said Yoonji, pointing to other parts of the wall. "These symbols appear to be instructions or records. If we could translate them, we might learn who built this place." Linguist Somin Kang joined the exploration team and spent weeks studying the symbols. She was an expert in ancient languages and had learned to read many different types of writing systems. Slowly, she began to understand patterns in the alien text. "Some of these symbols are similar to very old human writing," she reported. "It's like they evolved from the same source but changed over time. I think I can translate parts of it." The first word she translated sent chills through the entire crew. According to the ancient text, this place had been built by the children of the Blue World who had traveled far from their birth home to bring knowledge to the young races. "The Blue World," whispered Minju. "That could mean Earth." Computer. Specialist Beomgyu Han worked with Somin to feed the translated text into the ship's computers. They hoped the artificial intelligence could help them understand more of the ancient writing. "Captain," said Beomgyu after several days of work, "the computer has made some connections. According to these texts, the beings who built these cities called themselves the Shepherds. They said their purpose was to guide and protect younger civilizations until those races could stand on their own." "Shepherds," repeated Security Chief Dae-ho Kim. "That sounds like what humans do when we take care of animals or help other people." Science Officer Yeren Oh had been studying the technology they found in the ruins. "Whatever these shepherds were capable of, their science was incredible," she said. "I've found evidence of machines that could change the weather on entire planets, ships that could travel between stars in days instead of months, and computers that could think and learn like living beings." As the years passed, the crew of the Hangang found more ruins on every planet they visited. The story that emerged from the ancient texts was amazing and terrifying. Long ago, a powerful civilization had controlled this part of the galaxy. They had built cities on hundreds of worlds and had guided the development of many different alien species. But something had gone wrong. The texts spoke of a great war, of enemies who wanted to destroy the shepherds and everything they had built. The final entries they could translate mentioned evacuation plans and the need to hide the remaining people in a safe place until they could return. "They were running away from something," said Dong-hyuk after reading the latest translations. "The last messages talk about sending their people to the far sanctuary where they would be safe until the danger passed." "How long ago did this happen?" asked Minju. "Based on the geological evidence," said Hyunwoo, "I estimate these cities were abandoned between 2 and 3 million years ago." The crew looked at each other with growing understanding. 2 million years ago was around the time that human ancestors first appeared on Earth. Could it be possible that humans were the descendants of these ancient shepherds? Had Earth been the far sanctuary mentioned in the texts? "If this is true," said Taehyun quietly, "then humans aren't a young species at all." We're the survivors of an ancient civilization that once ruled the galaxy. As their 20th year of exploration began, the crew of the Hongong had collected enough evidence to support an incredible theory. The alien races that currently controlled the galaxy were not the first advanced civilizations. Before them, humans or their ancestors had built a great empire among the stars. But what had happened to force them to abandon everything and flee? To Earth? And who or what had driven them away? The answers to those questions were still waiting somewhere among the ruins of forgotten worlds. 25 years into their journey, the crew of the Hongong made a discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about human history. Navigator Yuna Zhang detected an unusual signal coming from a planet in a system they had almost decided to skip. "Captain, this is different from anything we've found before," Yuna reported excitedly. "The signal is artificial, but it's still active after all these years. Something on that planet is still working." Captain Minju Kim felt her heart racing as she looked at the readings. After years of exploring dead ruins, they had finally found a place where ancient technology was still functioning. "Set course for that planet immediately," she ordered. The planet was larger than Earth and covered mostly by oceans. On the biggest continent, their scanners detected a massive structure that looked like a pyramid made of black metal. The pyramid was sending out the signal they had detected, a repeating pattern that seemed almost like a beacon calling to them. "The pyramid is huge," said Chief Engineer Yunji Lee as they approached the planet. "It's at least 5 kilometers tall and 10 kilometers wide at the base. I've never seen anything like it." When they landed near the pyramid, the crew discovered something amazing. As they got closer to the structure, symbols began glowing on its surface. The symbols looked familiar. They were similar to the writing they had found on other worlds, but much more complex and detailed. "It's responding to our presence," said Communications Officer Jin-Woo Lim, watching his instruments carefully. "The signal is getting stronger as we get closer." Dr. Hyunwoo Choi led a team to examine the pyramid's entrance. Unlike the ruins they had found on other planets, this structure was in perfect condition. The black metal showed no signs of age or damage, even though it had been standing for millions of years. "There's an opening here," Hyunwoo called out. "It looks like it was designed for people our size to walk through." As they entered the pyramid, lights began turning on automatically, showing them a path deeper into the structure. The walls were covered with symbols and pictures that told the story of an ancient civilization. Linguist Somin Kang and computer specialist Beomgyu Han worked together to understand what they were seeing. The pictures showed beings that looked exactly like humans, but they were wearing advanced clothing and using technology that seemed like magic. "These aren't just similar to humans," Somin said with wonder in her voice. "These are humans. Look at their faces, their hands, the way they stand and move. They're identical to us." The path led them to a central chamber deep inside the pyramid. In the center of the room was a machine unlike anything they had ever seen. It was made of the same black metal as the pyramid, and it was covered with glowing symbols that moved and changed as they watched. "It's some kind of computer," said Beomgyu, studying the machine carefully. "But it's far more advanced than anything we know how to build. I think it's trying to communicate with us." When Beomgyu touched one of the glowing symbols, the machine responded immediately. The air above it began to shimmer, and suddenly they were looking at three-dimensional images floating in front of them. The images showed the history of the galaxy in amazing detail. They saw the rise of human civilization millions of years ago, when Earth was just one of thousands of worlds controlled by something called the Terran Empire. The empire was vast and powerful, stretching across most of the galaxy. "Look at this," said cultural specialist Dongyuk Nam, pointing at the images. "Humans didn't start on Earth. They came from another world and built colonies everywhere, including Earth." The machine showed them how humans had helped many alien species develop technology and learn to live peacefully together. The same alien races that now controlled the galaxy had once been guided and protected by human teachers and leaders. "We were their shepherds," whispered Medical Officer Hayan Song. "Just like the ancient texts said." But then the images showed darker events. Other aliens from outside the galaxy had arrived, beings filled with hate and jealousy. These invaders were angry that humans had built such a successful civilization. They wanted to destroy everything humans had created and take control of. the galaxy for themselves. "The war," said Security Chief Daeho Kim, watching scenes of space battles that filled the images above them. "This is what destroyed the human empire." The war had lasted for thousands of years. The invading aliens were powerful and ruthless, using weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They had allies among some of the galaxy's species that were jealous of human success. Science Officer Yaren studied the technical details shown in the images. "The humans were winning at first," she observed. "Their technology was superior, and they had the loyalty of most alien species. But the invaders kept coming in larger and larger numbers." The final images were heartbreaking. As the human empire crumbled, the remaining leaders made a desperate decision. They would send their people to the most distant and hidden colony. They had a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy called Earth. "They evacuated everyone they could save," said Salman, tears in her eyes as she watched the images. Millions of humans fled to Earth while their homeworlds burned. The machine showed the last act of the human empire. The remaining leaders used their most powerful technology to hide Earth from the invaders. They created barriers in space that would make Earth invisible to enemy scanners and weapons. Then they erased all records of Earth's location from their computer systems. "They sacrificed themselves to save us," said Taehyun Park quietly. "The humans who stayed behind fought to the end so that the people on Earth would be safe. But there was more. The machine revealed that the evacuation had been so rushed that the refugees on Earth lost most of their technology and knowledge. They had to start over as primitive people, slowly rebuilding civilization from almost nothing. That's why we think we're a young species," realized Minju. "We forgot our own history. The humans who fled to Earth had to survive without their advanced technology, so we developed everything again from the beginning. The machine had one final revelation. The aliens who now controlled the galaxy were not the original invaders. Those enemies had destroyed themselves in civil wars after defeating the human empire. The current galactic powers were the descendants of species that had once served and learned from humans." "They've forgotten too," said Baeom-gyu in amazement. "The aliens who think we're primitive children are actually the children of our former students and allies." The machine continued to show them information for several days. They learned about human technology that could heal any injury, ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks, and cities that floated among the clouds of gas giant planets. They saw the peaceful civilization humans had built and the knowledge they had shared with other species. "All of this knowledge is stored in here," said Yunji, studying the machine's construction. "This pyramid is like a giant library, containing everything the human empire ever learned." "But why is it still here?" asked Yuna. "Why didn't the invaders destroy it?" Soman found the answer in the machine's records. "The pyramid was hidden just like Earth. The humans built it as a backup plan, hoping that someday their descendants might return and need this information." "They were waiting for us," said Hyunwoo with wonder. "All this time they were waiting for humans to come back and reclaim their heritage." The crew spent weeks downloading as much information as they could store in their ship's computers. The knowledge was incredible. Medical techniques that could extend human life for centuries, engineering principles that could build cities in space, and peaceful methods for communicating with alien species. As they prepared to leave the pyramid, Minju looked back at the ancient machine that had revealed the truth about humanity's past. Her people were not the young, primitive species the galaxy believed them to be. They were the heirs of a great civilization that had once brought peace and knowledge to countless worlds. "What do we do with this information?" asked Daeho. "Do we return to Earth immediately and tell everyone what we've learned?" Minju thought carefully about the question. They still had 25 years left in their mission, and there might be more discoveries waiting for them. But more importantly, she knew that returning to Earth with this knowledge would change everything. Humans would no longer be content to hide on their distant world, while other species controlled the galaxy. "We continue our mission," she decided. "We need to learn as much as we can before we go home. When we return to Earth, we need to be ready to reclaim our place among the stars." The crew agreed, but they all knew that their journey had become something much more important than simple exploration. They were no longer just discovering new worlds. They were preparing to restore humanity to its rightful position as the galaxy's guiding civilization. As the Hangang left the pyramid planet behind, the ancient machine continued sending its signal into space, waiting patiently for the next group of humans who might need the knowledge it protected. After discovering the truth about humanity's ancient empire, the crew of the Hangang spent the next 25 years exploring with new purpose. They were no longer just looking for ruins, they were searching for technology and knowledge that could help humanity reclaim its place in the galaxy. Admiral Sun-Ho Lee, who had been promoted from captain when the previous admiral died of old age, stood on the bridge watching the stars. He was now 60 years old, but the medical advances they had learned from the pyramid had kept him healthy and strong. Many of the original crew members were still alive and active, their lives extended by ancient human knowledge. "Admiral, we've completed our survey of the final system," reported Navigator Yuna Zhang. She was now the ship's second-in-command and had become an expert in reading the star maps they had found in various ruins. "We've discovered ruins on 47 different worlds, and we've collected enough technology to transform human civilization." Chief Engineer Yoonji Lee had spent decades studying the ancient technology with engineer Minho Jung and technical specialist Soyoung Park. Together, they had rebuilt many of the Hangang systems using principles learned from the pyramid and other discoveries. "The ship's new engines can travel 3 times faster than before," Yoonji reported. "We've also installed better shields and communication systems. The Hangang is now more advanced than any ship the current galactic powers possess." Dr. Kangmin Yu and biologist Narration had made perhaps the most important discoveries of all. Working with the genetic information found in the pyramid, they had learned how to activate dormant abilities in human DNA. "We've successfully awakened genetic memories in 12 crew members," Dr. Yu explained to the Admiral. "They can now understand the ancient human language without translation, and they seem to have instinctive knowledge about how to use the old technology." "The abilities are different for each person," added Nari. "Some can communicate with the ancient computers just by touching them. Others can sense the location of hidden ruins from orbit. It's like they're remembering skills their ancestors had millions of years ago." The crew had also learned disturbing news about the current state of the galaxy. During their exploration, they had intercepted communications from the alien government and discovered that the Terran Assessment Council had become the Galactic Dominion, a harsh empire that oppressed younger species and prevented them from developing advanced technology. "They're doing exactly what the original invaders did," said Security Chief Daeho Kim angrily. "They've forgotten that humans once helped them learn and grow, and now they're keeping other species in slavery." Science Officer Yeren had studied the Dominion's technology and found it wanting. "Their science has actually gone backward in some areas," she reported. "Without human guidance, they've become focused on weapons and control rather than knowledge and cooperation." As they prepared for the journey home, Admiral Lee called a meeting of all senior officers. The main question was simple but important. What should humanity do with the knowledge they had gained? "We could return to Earth quietly and share this information with our government," suggested Communications Officer Jinwoo Lim. "Let Earth's leaders decide how to use it." "Or we could announce ourselves to the galaxy immediately," said Cultural Specialist Dong-Hyuk Nam. "Show the Dominion that humans have returned and demand they stop oppressing other species." Medical Officer Haeun Song, now the ship's chief medical officer, had a different concern. "We need to be careful," she warned. "The Dominion has weapons that could destroy Earth if they see us as a threat. We should approach this slowly and carefully." Admiral Lee listened to all the opinions before making his decision. "We'll return to Earth first and share our discoveries with humanity. But we won't hide what we've learned. If the galaxy once belonged to our ancestors, then it's time for humans to take responsibility for fixing what has gone wrong." The journey back to Earth took another 25 years, but it passed quickly for the crew. They spent the time learning to use their new abilities and preparing for what they knew would be a difficult transition. Many of them practiced communicating with the ancient computers they had brought back from the ruins. Linguist Somin Kong and computer specialist Baeomgyu Han worked together to create new translation programs that could help other humans learn the ancient language. They also prepared detailed reports about everything they had discovered. "When we return to Earth, everything will change," Somin said to Baeomgyu as they worked. "Humans will learn that they're not alone in the universe, and that they have a great responsibility to help other species." During their journey home, They encountered something that proved how much the galaxy had changed since they left Earth. A small alien ship was being attacked by Dominion warships, and the crew was calling for help. "They're from a species called the Virani," reported Yuna, studying the signals. "According to our databases, they were one of the species that humans helped develop space travel millions of years ago. Now the Dominion is hunting them because they refused to surrender their independence." Admiral Lee made a quick decision. "We're going to help them. It's time to start acting like the protectors our ancestors were." The battle was brief but decisive. The Hongang's new weapons and shields were far superior to anything the Dominion possessed. The attacking ships were disabled in minutes, and the Virani vessel was saved. "Who are you?" asked the Virani captain when they established communication. "Your ship uses technology we've never seen before." "We are humans from Earth," replied Admiral Lee. "And we've come to restore the peace our ancestors built." The Virani captain was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice filled with wonder, he said, "The ancient stories speak of the shepherds who once guided our people. They said the shepherds would return when the galaxy needed them most." "The stories are true," Lee confirmed. "We are the descendants of those shepherds, and we're going home to prepare for the work ahead." When the Hangang finally reached Earth's solar system, they found their home world much changed. The population had grown to 12 billion people, and humanity had established colonies on Mars and several moons, but Earth's technology was still far behind what the crew had learned during their journey. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from Earth's space defense stations," reported Jinwoo. "They want to know who we are and why our ship doesn't match any known design." "Tell them we're the crew of the Hangang, returning from our 50-year mission," Lee replied. "And tell them we're bringing gifts that will change the course of human history." The reunion with Earth was emotional for everyone on the ship. Many crew members had family members who were now much older, and some had grandchildren they had never met. But the joy of homecoming was mixed with the weight of responsibility they now carried. President Jiyeon Song of the United Earth government met with Admiral Lee personally to hear about their discoveries. When he showed her the evidence of humanity's ancient empire, she was stunned into silence. "You're telling me that humans once ruled most of the galaxy?" she asked in disbelief. "Not ruled," Lee corrected. "Guided. Our ancestors were teachers and protectors, not conquerors, and according to everything we've learned, the galaxy desperately needs that guidance again." The crew of the Hangang spent months sharing their knowledge with Earth's scientists and leaders. The medical advances alone would revolutionize human life, extending lifespans and eliminating most diseases. The new technology would allow humanity to build ships and cities beyond anything they had ever imagined. But the most important discovery was the genetic awakening that Dr. Yu and Nari had perfected. Soon, thousands of humans on Earth began, experiencing the same abilities that the crew had developed. They could understand ancient languages, operate advanced technology instinctively, and sense things about the galaxy that normal humans couldn't perceive. "We're becoming what we were always meant to be," Admiral Lee told President Song during one of their meetings. "Our ancestors were forced to hide on Earth and forget their heritage, but now we're ready to reclaim our responsibility as the galaxy's guardians." As news of the discoveries spread across Earth, humanity began to change. The knowledge that they were descendants of an ancient galactic civilization filled people with pride and purpose, but it also made them aware of the suffering that other species were experiencing under the Dominion's rule. "We can't stay hidden on Earth anymore," President Song announced to the world. "Our ancestors built a peaceful galaxy where all species could grow and learn together. It's our duty to restore that peace." The preparation began immediately. Earth's shipyards started building new vessels using technology from the pyramid. Scientists worked to awaken genetic memories in more humans. Diplomats studied the ancient records to learn how their ancestors had communicated with alien species. Admiral Lee knew that the easy part of their mission was over. They had found the truth about humanity's past and returned home safely. Now came the difficult task of confronting the Dominion and reclaiming humanity's role as the galaxy's protectors. But as he looked at the enthusiasm and determination of his fellow humans, he felt confident that they were ready for the challenge ahead. The children of the ancient shepherds were coming home to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the 3 years after the Hangang returned to Earth, humanity was ready to reveal itself to the galaxy. The ship that approached the Galactic Dominion's capital world was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The new Earth vessel, named Shepherd's Return, was built using ancient human technology and crewed by people whose genetic memories had been awakened. Ambassador Wanbin Cho stood on the bridge as they approached the massive space station that served as the Dominion's government center. He was nervous, but determined. As Earth's chief diplomat, he would be the first to speak with the alien leaders who controlled the galaxy. "They're demanding that we identify ourselves and explain why our ship doesn't appear in their databases," reported the communications officer. "They sound confused and a little frightened." Wanbin smiled slightly. After 50 years of being dismissed as primitive children, it felt good to surprise the aliens who thought they knew everything about human capabilities. "Tell them we are representatives of Earth, requesting an audience with the Galactic Council," Wanbin replied. "Inform them that we have important information about the galaxy's history that they need to hear." The response came quickly. "They're granting us permission to dock, but they're sending a full security escort. I think they're worried about our technology." As the Shepherd's Return docked at the station, Wanbin reviewed the evidence he would present to the council. Historian Jisoo Bei had prepared a detailed presentation showing proof of humanity's ancient empire. They had genetic records, archaeological evidence, and most importantly, working examples of technology that the current galactic powers couldn't understand or duplicate. "Remember," Jisoo said as they prepared to leave the ship, "we're not here to threaten or conquer. We're here to remind them of what the galaxy once was and what it could be again." The council chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. At the center sat the 5 supreme chancellors who ruled the Dominion. Wanbin recognized their species from the ancient records. They were all descendants of races that had once been students and allies of the human empire. Supreme Chancellor Vex Tar, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, spoke first. "Humans of Earth, you have requested this audience claiming to possess important historical information. We have granted your request out of curiosity, but we warn you not to waste our time with false claims or primitive theories." Wanbin stepped forward, calmly. "Honored chancellors, we thank you for this opportunity. What we have to share will indeed seem impossible at first, but we ask that you examine our evidence with open minds." He gestured to Jisoo, who activated a holographic projector. The air above the chamber filled with 3-dimensional images, showing the galaxy as it had existed millions of years ago. The alien representatives murmured in surprise as they saw star maps that were far more detailed than any they possessed. "These records show the galaxy during the time of the Terran Empire," Jisoo explained, "an ancient human civilization that existed long before your current governments were formed." Chancellor Zekthos, whose species resembled large insects, clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Impossible. Our own records show that humans have only possessed space travel for 2 centuries. You are clearly showing us fabricated images." "Then perhaps you would prefer to examine physical evidence," said Wanbin. He signaled to his team, who brought forward several artifacts recovered from the ruins they had explored. The items were made of materials that shouldn't exist according to current scientific knowledge, and they radiated energy patterns that the aliens' scanners couldn't explain. Dr. Kang-Min Yu stepped forward to demonstrate one of the artifacts. As he touched it, the device responded to his genetic signature and began displaying information in the ancient human language. The alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the device showed star charts, technical diagrams, and historical records. "This technology responds only to human genetic patterns," Dr. Yu explained. "It was designed by our ancestors to preserve knowledge for their descendants." Chancellor Mordun, whose people had always prided themselves on their technological expertise, examined the device with growing amazement. "The energy efficiency alone is impossible," he muttered. "This single device contains more processing power than our largest computers." Fleet Commander Seojun Ryu then presented what would prove to be the most convincing evidence. "If you require further proof of our claims, we invite you to examine our ship's technology. The Shepherd's Return is built using principles that we recovered from ancient human archives." The alien scientists who examined the ship were shocked by what they found. The engines operated on theories they didn't understand. The shields used energy in ways they couldn't duplicate, and the computer systems were centuries ahead of their own technology. "Where did you obtain this knowledge?" demanded Chancellor Vextar, his composure finally cracking. "No species in the galaxy possesses such advanced science. We obtained it from our own ancestors," replied Wanbin. "The same ancestors who once guided and protected your species when they were young civilizations struggling to understand the universe." Cultural attaché Cheong-im then presented the most disturbing evidence of all. She showed the alien leaders their own ancient legends and religious texts, pointing out references to mysterious beings called the First Ones, or the Shepherds, who had appeared in their distant past to teach them about technology, art, and peaceful cooperation. "Your own stories describe humans," Cheong explained. "The beings your ancestors worshipped as wise teachers were our people. The knowledge that formed the foundation of your civilizations came from the human empire." The council chamber erupted. In argument, as representatives from different species debated the implications of what they were hearing. Some refused to believe that their civilizations owed their existence to human guidance. Others began to remember old stories and legends that suddenly made new sense. Chancellor Yelona, the oldest member of the council, spoke with a trembling voice. "I have studied the ancient texts of my people for centuries. There are indeed references to teachers who came from the stars to guide us. We always assumed they were mythological figures." "They were real," said Jesu gently. "And they cared deeply about helping younger species reach their potential. The peace and cooperation that your ancestors enjoyed under human guidance could exist again." Supreme Chancellor Keslan, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke. "Even if we accept your claims about the past, what do you want from us now? Are you here to reclaim your ancient empire and reduce us to slavery?" Wanbin shook his head firmly. "We're here to offer partnership, not domination. Our ancestors were destroyed because some species feared human leadership and allied with invaders from outside the galaxy. We don't want to repeat those mistakes. The current Dominion has brought fear and oppression to many worlds," added Fleet Commander Seojin. "Young species are prevented from developing, independent worlds are conquered, and knowledge is hoarded by the powerful. This is the opposite of what our ancestors tried to build." Dr. Yu demonstrated another ancient device that projected images of the galaxy's current state. The presentation showed worlds in rebellion, species being forced into slavery, and vast regions where scientific progress had been banned. "Your empire is failing," he said sadly. "Not because your people are evil, but because you've forgotten the principles that once made this galaxy peaceful and prosperous." Chancellor Vextar looked at the evidence with growing understanding. "You're saying that we've become like the invaders who destroyed your ancestors?" "In some ways, yes," Wanbin admitted. "But unlike those ancient enemies, you have the capacity to change. Your ancestors were good people who wanted to learn and grow. That same potential exists in you." The debate continued for hours as the alien leaders struggled to accept the truth about their history. Some remained skeptical, demanding more proof. Others began to see connections between the ancient records and their own cultural traditions. Finally, Chancellor Yelona stood and addressed the human delegation. "If what you say is true, then our civilizations owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But more than that, we have betrayed the trust your ancestors placed in us." "The past is past," replied Wanbin. "What matters now is what we do going forward. We're offering to share the knowledge our ancestors left behind, but only if you're willing to return to the principles of cooperation and respect that once made this galaxy a place of peace." The council voted to form a special committee to study the human evidence and decide how to respond. It would take time to convince all the alien species, but the process of change had begun. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Chancellor Keslan approached Wanbin privately. "If we accept your proposal and work to reform the Dominion, will you help us? Many of our people have forgotten how to live in peace with other species." "That's exactly what we're hoping to do," Wanbin replied. "Our ancestors were teachers and we're ready to continue that tradition. But this time we'll work together as equals to build something better than either of our civilizations could create alone." The news of humanity's true nature spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Some species welcomed the revelation and looked forward to learning from there. 1 year after the revelation at the Galactic Council, the galaxy was transforming in ways that amazed everyone. The transition hadn't been easy or simple, but progress was being made on worlds throughout known space. President Ji-Yun Song stood in her office on Earth, looking at reports from dozens of star systems. The changes were remarkable. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together, young civilizations were being allowed to develop their own technology, and the harsh laws of the old Dominion were being replaced with agreements based on cooperation and mutual respect. The Virani delegation has arrived for the peace conference, announced her assistant, Admiral Hyungjun Kwon. He had taken over coordination of Earth's expanding diplomatic efforts as more and more alien species requested human guidance. Excellent, replied President Song. They were one of the first species to support our proposals. Their example has encouraged many others to join the new alliance. The peace conference was being held on Earth, in a new building designed specifically for meetings between different species. The architecture combined human design principles with elements from alien cultures, creating a space where everyone could feel comfortable and welcome. Dr. Minji Seo, who had become Earth's chief education coordinator, was preparing for one of the most important sessions of the conference. Representatives from 47 different species would be discussing how to share knowledge and technology in ways that helped everyone grow and learn. The response has been incredible, she told Captain Gyumin An, who led the expeditions, to recover and restore ancient human sites throughout the galaxy. We've received requests from over 100 worlds asking for help establishing schools and research centers. The restoration projects are going well too, Gyumin replied. We've found and repaired ancient human facilities on 36 worlds so far. Most of them contain libraries and laboratories that the original inhabitants are eager to use again. The restoration work had revealed something wonderful. Many of the species that were now part of the galactic community had maintained oral traditions and cultural practices that dated back to the time of human guidance. When they saw the ancient facilities being repaired, they remembered stories their ancestors had told about the wise teachers who had once lived among them. President Song walked through the conference building, observing the interactions between representatives from different worlds. In one room, human scientists were teaching alien researchers how to use medical technology that could cure diseases that had plagued their people for generations. In another, alien artists were showing humans new forms of music and visual art that had evolved during the millions of years since the ancient empire fell. It's working better than we ever hoped, said Ambassador Wanbin Cho, joining the president as she toured the facility. The species that were most opposed to change at first are now some of our strongest supporters. What changed their minds? Asked President Song. Results, Wanbin replied with a smile. When they saw what cooperation could accomplish, they realized that the old ways of fear and control were holding everyone back. One of the most successful examples was taking place in a nearby star system where 3 species had been fighting over resources for decades. Human mediators had helped them realize that by working together and sharing technology, they could develop those resources in ways that benefited everyone. The former enemies were now partners in building new cities and developing clean energy systems. The transformation wasn't limited to politics and technology. Cultural changes were happening throughout the galaxy as species rediscovered arts, philosophies, and ways of life that had been suppressed under the old Dominion. Ancient festivals were being celebrated again. Traditional crafts were being revived, and young people from different worlds were learning to communicate and work together. Fleet Commander Seojin Ryu reported to the president about the military situation. The last of the Dominion hardliners have surrendered, he announced. The few species that refused to join the new alliance have agreed to remain in their own territories and not interfere with the cooperative worlds. No violence was necessary? Asked President Song. None at all, Seojin confirmed. When they saw that their own people were choosing to leave for worlds with more freedom and opportunity, they realized that their old methods couldn't compete with what we were offering. The success of the peaceful transition had surprised many observers. Instead of the bloody conflicts that most people expected when a galactic government changed, the shift to human-guided cooperation had happened with remarkably little fighting. The key had been demonstrating that the new system produced better results for everyone involved. Dr. Kang Min Yu and his research team had made another important discovery during their work with alien genetics. Many of the species in the galaxy retained genetic memories of their time under human guidance, similar to what humans had experienced when their own dormant memories were awakened. We are helping them remember skills and knowledge that their ancestors possessed, Dr. Yu explained to a gathering of scientists from multiple worlds. It's not just humans who lost important abilities during the Dark Period. Everyone suffered when the galaxy was divided by fear and competition. As these genetic memories were awakened, representatives from different species began to recall the principles and methods that had made the ancient galaxy peaceful and prosperous. They remembered how their ancestors had resolved conflicts through discussion rather than violence, how they had shared resources to ensure everyone had what they needed, and how they had celebrated diversity rather than fearing differences. The restoration of ancient human worlds had created opportunities for practical education. Young people from throughout the galaxy came to these sites to study and work together. They learned to operate the old technology, but more importantly, they learned the values and approaches that had made that technology possible. Captain Gumin An described one particularly moving moment during the restoration of an ancient human city on a world that had been abandoned for 2 million years. When we activated the central computer system, it played a message that the original inhabitants had recorded before they evacuated. They said they hoped their descendants would return someday and continue the work of bringing peace and knowledge to the galaxy. They also left instructions for maintaining the facilities and caring for the other species that lived nearby, added Dr. Minji Seo. Even as they were fleeing for their lives, they were thinking about the welfare of their students and allies. These messages from the past provided important guidance for the new galactic community. The ancient humans had learned from their mistakes and left detailed advice about how to build a civilization that could last and grow without creating the jealousies and fears that had led to their downfall. President Song often found herself thinking about the crew of the Hangang, whose 50-year journey had made all of this possible. Many of them were still alive, their lifespans extended by the medical advances they had discovered. They served as advisors and teachers, but they also took time to enjoy the peaceful galaxy they had helped create. Admiral Sunho Lee, now over 90 years old but still active and healthy, had become something of a legend among both humans and aliens. His decision to share humanity's discoveries rather than using them for conquest had set the tone for everything that followed. We could have returned to Earth and used our advanced technology to build weapons and conquer the galaxy, he said during a ceremony honoring the Hangang crew. But that would have made us no better than the invaders who destroyed our ancestors. Instead, we chose to remember that our greatest strength has always been our ability to bring out the best in others. The ceremony was taking place at the site of the original pyramid where the crew had discovered the truth about human history. The ancient machine was still functioning, and it had become a place of pilgrimage for people from throughout the galaxy who wanted to learn about the origins of their civilization. Children from dozens of different species played together in gardens that had been planted around the pyramid. They spoke a mixture of languages, but they understood each other perfectly because they had grown up learning that communication and cooperation were more important than the differences between species. Watching these children, President Song felt confident about the future. The galaxy that was emerging from decades of conflict and oppression was becoming something beautiful, a place where every species could contribute their unique gifts while working together toward common goals. "This is what our ancestors dreamed of," she said to the assembled crowd. "Not an empire ruled by fear, but a community built on hope. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not dominion, but partnership." The new Galactic Alliance had adopted a simple principle that guided all their decisions. Every action should be judged by whether it helped all species grow and thrive together. It was a principle that the ancient humans had tried to follow, and it was proving just as effective in the modern galaxy. As the ceremony concluded and representatives from different worlds prepared to return to their homes, President Song looked up at the stars and smiled. Somewhere among those distant suns, the descendants of humanity's ancient students were building